There are places we're not meant to go, roads we're not meant to walk alone, and people we were never meant to meet. But sometimes curiosity wins. Sometimes we tell ourselves, it's just an abandoned building, just a quiet road, just a stranger asking for help. And that's when it happens. That's when the line between thrill and terror begins to blur. In tonight's video, you'll hear 3 true stories. A clown that shouldn't have been real, waiting in the shadows of an abandoned cement factory. A blood-soaked stranger standing silently in the middle of a living room with no memory of who he is. And a man in the snow who smiled too wide and followed too closely on a night colder than fear itself. These aren't just ghost stories. They're moments where real life turned wrong. Moments that remind us the most terrifying things don't always crawl or howl. Sometimes they walk, talk, smile, and wait for you to let your guard down. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and remember, sometimes the scariest places are real, and the people in them are worse than anything you imagined. Story 1. The Haunting Clown at Cementland. Some places aren't just abandoned, they're forgotten, left to rot, left for the brave, or the stupid. And sometimes they're left for reasons darker than anyone wants to admit. If you've never heard of it, Cementland is an unfinished cement factory in northern St. Louis. It's massive. Towering walls, concrete corridors, rusty stairwells that creak under your feet. And the worst part, there's no security. No lights, just silence, and what you bring with you. Back in 2016, during the height of that whole creepy clown hysteria sweeping the US, my friend Max and I thought it would be fun to explore the place at night. It was supposed to be harmless, a rush of joke and adrenaline hit. Something we could brag about later. Max was the bold one. He stood 5'10", always cracking jokes, never took anything seriously. Me, I was barely 5'2", quieter always, a little more cautious. But that night I ignored my gut and followed him into the dark. We brought flashlights, climbed a broken fence, and entered the skeletal shell of the factory. Inside, the silence was overwhelming, broken only by wind howling through cracks and broken windows, sounding almost like whispers. It was cold, sharp. Not just in temperature, but in presence. We climbed 5 stories up a rusted ladder onto one of the rooftops. From up there, the city lights looked like a different world, far away, unreachable. We kept walking along a long, narrow corridor, walls cracked, graffiti smeared across every surface. That's when we saw it. At the end of the hallway, barely visible in the dim moonlight, a tall figure. Motionless, wearing a black suit and a clown mask. Not a goofy Halloween store clown. This mask was wrong. The painted smile twisted too far, like it had been stretched, and the eyes dark hollow sockets that seemed to watch you without blinking. In his hand he held a thick wooden stick, just standing there, watching. Max laughed. He yelled down the hall, "Yo, Halloween's not till October, dude." Then he actually tossed some dirt in the clown's direction. He thought it was funny. But the clown didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared. I felt something cold crawl across my back. Not fear, warning. We slowly backed away, but before we even turned fully, we heard it. A voice, deep, raspy, too close. "Where do you think you're going, little girl?" My blood ran cold. I turned and the clown was running, not walking, not creeping, charging at us with terrifying speed, the wooden stick raised like a weapon. Max screamed, "Run," and we bolted. We raced down the hall toward the ladder. Max reached it first and scrambled down. I grabbed the metal rungs just as I felt a sharp yank on my hair. His hand, cold, calloused, gripped hard. I kicked wildly, clawing at the air, feeling the pull on my scalp. I screamed. Somehow I don't even remember how I tore myself free, but in the panic, I lost my footing and fell 3 stories straight down. I don't remember the impact, just pain. Blinding, burning pain in my thigh, my shoulder, my arms. I must have blacked out for a moment because the next thing I remember is Max dragging me across the broken floor, yelling my name. My leg was bleeding. Badly. I couldn't walk. Still, we made it out limping, shaking, bleeding. But before we left, I looked back. He was standing there, on the 5th floor, looking down at us. Still, silent, watching. We got to the hospital. I needed 23 stitches in my thigh and had deep bruises up and down my arms. Physically, I healed, but my mind didn't. I've never gone back to Cementland. I never will. Because I'm not sure what we saw that night was just some crazy guy in a costume. It didn't feel human. It felt like something that lives in those dark places. Something that waits for people like us to come looking for a thrill. And now, I know better. Sometimes the scariest thing in the dark isn't what you imagine. It's what's already there, smiling, waiting, and following. Story 2. The stranger covered in blood at my front door. There's something comforting about isolation. The way silence wraps around a country home like a blanket. No traffic, no neighbors, no noise. Just you. And the quiet. But quiet doesn't always mean safe. Sometimes it just means no one can hear you scream. This happened over 10 years ago in a rural part of Missouri, miles away from the nearest town. I was living in my family's house at the time, a simple place surrounded by fields, gravel roads, and woods that stretched endlessly in every direction. It was the kind of house where you could hear the wind whistling through the siding, the distant hum of tractors during the day, and absolutely nothing at night. That night started just like any other. My parents had gone into town to visit a friend, and I had just gotten home from an early morning shift. Tired, I collapsed onto the living room couch, letting the warmth of the soft lamplight lull me into a nap. The only sounds were the ticking wall clock and the occasional creak of old wood settling. I woke up to the sound of the front door slowly creaking open. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe my parents had come back and forgot their keys. I sat up, still groggy, expecting to hear familiar voices. Instead, I heard nothing. No footsteps. No bags being dropped. No greetings. Just silence. Then I saw him. A man standing in the middle of my living room. He was tall, at least 6 foot, built like a linebacker. He wore a white t-shirt with the sleeves cut off, but the shirt was stained red. Not just spotted, soaked. His arms were drenched, his jeans too. Even his boots left small smears on the hardwood floor. His face was pale, eyes glassy, unfocused, like he wasn't entirely there. At first I thought it was a prank, or maybe I was still dreaming. But the smell hit me a second later. Blood, iron, sweat, dirt. I froze. Every part of me screamed to run, but I couldn't move. It felt like I was staring at a ghost, a nightmare made real. I stammered, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" He didn't answer, just muttered something under his breath. Garbled, slurred. Something like, "Where's my dad?" he said. I was supposed to. He wasn't making sense. Then I noticed he wasn't carrying a weapon. He wasn't aggressive. He just looked lost. That's when I glanced out the front window and everything clicked. Just beyond the ditch by the edge of our gravel road was a red pickup truck, smashed into a telephone pole, steam rising from the hood, windshield shattered. He must have crashed, probably drunk, maybe concussed, maybe worse. And in his confusion, he walked bleeding right into the first house he could find. Mine. Still scared out of my mind, I tried to stay calm. "I think you've been in an accident," I said, slowly rising to my feet. "Let's go outside and get some help." To my surprise, he followed. We stepped out into the freezing night. The air was sharp like knives against my skin. I helped guide him toward the driveway, all the while scanning the road, praying anyone would pass by. A few minutes later, headlights appeared in the distance. A passing driver saw us and stopped. He immediately called for an ambulance while I tried to keep the man conscious. Later, I learned that the man had suffered a severe head injury. He had no idea where he was, or even who he was at that moment. He survived, but the accident had nearly killed him. And me, I spent weeks sleeping with the lights on. Because no matter how rational I tried to be, I couldn't shake the image of him. A stranger drenched in blood, standing motionless in my living room in the middle of the night. He never meant harm. But that's what made it even worse. It wasn't evil that walked through my door. It was accident chaos, tragedy wearing a human face. And that is the kind of fear that lingers long after the door is locked. Story 3. The winter night on the deserted road. There's something different about the cold at night. It doesn't just sting your skin. It settles in your bones, reminding you just how alone you really are. It was late winter 2015. I was living alone and working at a small medical clinic in Branson, Missouri. I'd always been the independent type, never scared of going places by myself, especially when it meant a little adventure. But that night changed the way I looked at being alone. I'd just finished my shift and decided on impulse to head toward Table Rock Lake, a beautiful national park not far from town. I'd recently gotten a new iPhone and wanted to try the time-lapse feature on the sunset. When I arrived, the sky was already fading from gold to violet. The wind had picked up, and even with my winter coat, I could feel the cold crawling under the layers. There were no other cars in the main parking area except one. An old light blue sedan parked crookedly off to the side, its windows fogged over from the cold. I hesitated for a second, but figured someone had probably just gone hiking earlier in the day and hadn't come back yet. I changed into my hiking shoes, slipped on gloves, and started walking the trail toward the lake's edge. The path was marked by large stones and patches of snow, slick and uneven. I walked faster than I should have, worried I'd miss the sunset, and that's when I slipped. My foot caught a patch of ice hidden beneath the snow and my body slammed against the ground. Hard. I hit my head hard enough to see stars, and the sharp edge of a nearby rock tore through my pants and gashed my knee. Pain exploded through my skull and leg. I sat there in the snow, stunned, the cold seeping into my skin, my breath fogging in front of me. And then, I heard a voice behind me. "Hey there, you got a cigarette?" I turned around fast, adrenaline overriding the pain. There, about 20 feet away, was a man. He looked to be in his mid-40s, unshaven, pale, wearing a torn hoodie and jeans soaked at the bottom from the snow. But what really set me off was his eyes. They were too wide, too alert, and locked on me like a hunter tracking prey. I forced a polite smile. "No, sorry. I don't smoke." He chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. Then he started walking toward me. "You okay? Need some help?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'm fine. Just slipped." He kept coming anyway. Something about him didn't feel right. The way he looked at me. It wasn't concern. It was curiosity, like he was trying to figure out what he could get away with. He stopped a few feet from me and looked around. "No one else out here, huh?" he said almost to himself. Then, smiling too wide, he added, "Pretty quiet place." I lied quickly. "My boyfriend's on his way. He'll be here in a few minutes." His face twitched, just for a second. Then he said, "You want to sit in my car to warm up?" I shook my head, standing slowly. My knee screamed in pain, but I couldn't show it. I couldn't let him know I was hurt. He reached out a hand as if to help me, but his fingers grazed my coat too slowly, too deliberately. I stepped back fast. I need to get back. I have work early tomorrow. Still smiling, he said, I'll walk you back. Wouldn't want you falling again. I didn't answer. I just started walking. Fast. He followed. Not next to me. Not behind me. Beside, but slightly angled just far enough to block the trail if I tried to turn back. Every step felt like I was walking on a tightrope. When we reached the parking lot, I was praying, please let no one have slashed my tires. Please let my car start. I clicked the remote key, my headlights flashed. His car was still there, the blue sedan. I saw him glance toward it, then back at me. You sure you don't want to warm up a little before driving? He asked one last time. That's when I knew. If I said yes, I wasn't getting back out. I got in locked. The doors started the engine and peeled out so fast the tires spun in place. As I sped down the icy road, I saw him standing in my rearview mirror, just watching. I called the local police, gave them everything: description, plate number, location. They took the report, but I never heard anything back. Maybe he was just a lonely guy. Or maybe he was waiting for someone who wouldn't notice the danger until it was too late. All I know is, that night confidence nearly became my biggest mistake, because in the cold, in the silence, you can't always hear danger coming. Sometimes, it walks beside you, smiling, pretending to be help until it's too late to run. It's easy to dismiss stories like these, to say they were just unlucky. It was a crazy man, a weird night, a bad coincidence. But if you've ever felt watched in the dark, if you've ever had your instincts scream at you to turn around, then you already know real horror doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits inside old buildings wearing a twisted mask. Sometimes it walks through your unlocked door soaked in blood. And sometimes it follows you through the snow, asking if you need help. It doesn't always end with a scream. Often it ends with silence, with a figure in your rearview mirror, with a memory that won't leave you alone, with a question you'll ask yourself for the rest of your life. What would have happened if I'd stayed just 1 second longer? If tonight's stories stayed with you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've experienced something strange, something you can't explain, tell us. Your story might be next. Until then, lock your doors. Trust your instincts. And if someone in a clown mask asks where you're going, don't answer. Just run.